Hello, Rafik.
Hello. Hello. Thank you all for joining us to this 11 webinar of Free Forum under the title African Universities in Post-COVID, Assessing Opportunities and Challenges of Online Learning. So today we are joined by a very broad and eminent excuse me. Just before I continue, just some rules. If you're not talking, please mute your microphone so that actually we can proceed correctly with the webinar. The other thing is that today the webinar is actually available in 3 languages, English, French, and Arabic. You have the ability to switch the language. It's like the interpretation icon at the bottom. It's the little glob at the bottom of your screen. And you can choose English, French, or for Arabic, actually, you have to pick the Chinese icon. Just because there was it's a workaround to allow people that are attending the webinar and that speak only Arabic to use as well this tool. So to continue, so welcome to this 11th webinar organized by Reforum under the title African Universities in Post-COVID-19. We're looking at assessing the challenges and the opportunities that we are all facing with regard to the online learning. So I would start with like some opening remark. So I think most of us, whether in Africa or all worldwide, we've been actually, like most universities, have been a little bit struggling with pushing the online learning transformation or digital transformation of universities by adopting online learning. And there have been quite a bit of pushback due to the fact that there are just many hurdles that we have to overcome in terms of policies, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of like resistance to change by both students, administration, professors, policies, and governments. And we have been pushing on that. There are other actually like hurdles, like the cost, the business model, like the timelines it takes to create like an online course. Just for example, like if you wanted to create like a MOOC, it takes about 8 months if we wanted to design it correctly. And if we wanted to offer an online master like that has 18 modules or so, like it's an effort of about probably 10 years of work. So it is very difficult to do those kind of things and to do it without actual best practices that we'll be discussing today. And the benefits for online learning are, there is so many, like in terms of increasing reach, in terms of increasing quality of the courses, or even the amount of information that our learner can get. Like some studies have shown that actually just by converting a class to a kind of flipped class, online class, we can probably cover within the same time frame more than an extra 40% of the content that we could cover in classic setup of the university. And then come COVID. So COVID-19, like many countries, were actually had to just stop full presence classes and switch to something else. So suddenly online learning actually became a kind of lifeline for education. And it's actually like in a matter of weeks, like the thing we've been struggling with in terms of raising awareness, the importance of education and online learning has switched. And like today, it's very difficult to find a professor, a student who have not tried some form of online learning. I'm not saying that all of them, all the experience is the same, but at least everyone have tried some form, whether it's over WhatsApp or class or like video conferences and so on. But everybody has tried that, both professors, students, and so on. And then the awareness went to the institutions, where every university is now started understanding the importance of digital education and infrastructure investments and everything. And then even at the government levels. And this is something that happened like very quickly, which of course it's a good thing, but it comes also with other challenges that we're hoping that we can cover today. And so this quick shift introduced problems like in terms of how do we go from zero content to enough content to be able to continue the education of our students. it also created issues with regard to like policies, infrastructure, because like many countries actually did not accredit like online education methods, and in a matter of days, weeks, they had to shift the entire government actually and the students to start learning this way. And so we needed those kind of changes in policies and everything. And then of course you cannot switch from one setup to a new online mode without training, making sure that actually that the students are able to actually, students and professors are able to know how to best use those things. So this is for us like the kind of overall context that we would like to look at from different aspects today. And we brought actually different panelists with different background, different experiences, and we would like to actually have them share this feedback with us based on their what their universities, their governments have done, and what they've learned over the last few years, and more especially since the start of the COVID. So without further ado, I would be asking Dr. Alice Muenta, Deputy Executive Secretary of Reforum, to be doing the opening statement. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Vice Chancellors, distinguished webinar panelists, participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much to our moderator for webinar 11, Mr. Rafiq El Alami of Muhammad VI Polytechnic University in Morocco. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome you to the 11th in a series of 13 Reforum webinars. Today's webinar, African Universities in Post-COVID-19, Assessing the Opportunities and Challenges of Online Learning, has been motivated by the need for a high-level conversation, especially at this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, on the future of online learning at universities in Africa. Today, we are keen to learn about opportunities for ICT readiness in our universities and partner institutions, for knowledge sharing, for supporting innovations in delivery of agricultural services, supporting SMEs and other business innovations, for promoting inclusivity, for enhancing capacity, for generating data, for policy decisions. The question is, how best could we collaborate among African universities and with other regional and global knowledge centers? Ladies and gentlemen, today, the Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture, RUFORUM, as a network of 129 universities across 38 African countries, recognizes the urgent need to build the online learning and teaching capacities in its member universities, especially with the advent of COVID-19 and the glaring digital divide. The time has now arrived to consider the challenges and opportunities for universities on the continent for online learning, teaching, and research for both today and tomorrow. The spread of the COVID-19 across the globe has brought with it several effects that have hit most tertiary education institutions, shutting down classrooms, laboratories, libraries, and other teaching and learning facilities, as well as sending students home, were some of the immediate actions by higher education authorities. The non-discriminatory nature of the disease required that world-class universities, technical colleges, and everything else in between follow suit in the response to the instituted containment measures. Some higher education institutions quickly reorganized their systems, or simply transitions to already existing alternatives to in-classroom and in-laboratory instruction to ensure continuity. Unfortunately, other institutions, especially those in low-income countries, have up until now remained behind and have lost much of academic calendar time for teaching and research. Distinguished panelists, Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that much discussion has so far surrounded the need for the education system to shift from traditional approaches to the use of remote delivery methods. There is also a call for higher education institutions to reconfigure their existing curriculum to fit the new delivery methods. There's a very strong recognition and urgent call for the retooling of education staff to acquire skills to deliver education in the new normal. It would be realistic at this point to accept that COVID-19 will be with us for a while, and that necessary adjustments in the teaching and learning methods are therefore imperative. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to inform you that in looking ahead, RU Forum in 2019 developed the African Digital Agriculture Program, AFRIDA, as one of the regional initiatives. One of the pillars of AFRIDA is digital learning and sharing technologies to support effective learning and teaching experience ubiquitously within agriculture. I'm also pleased to inform you that at their ministerial meeting held on 5th December 2019 in Cape Coast, Ghana, African ministers responsible for agriculture, education, science, technology, and innovation endorsed this initiative for domestication on the African continent. As a follow-up to this endorsement, RU Forum is urging African governments and development partners to increase the financial and human capital investment in ICTs in African universities and the digitalization of the African value chains to support the rollout of this initiative, AFRIDA. This webinar seeks a dialogue on possible ways in which the COVID-19 crisis has increased access to online learning tools in response to the lockdown in Africa. Also, to discuss challenges and current and future opportunities for universities. As well, to discuss research, teaching, and learning changes that have so far taken place on the continent. And finally, to discuss the required changes in policies, regulations, and resources from our governments to ensure greater uptake of online teaching and learning as alternatives to traditional methods, among other issues. Join me to thank our moderator and panelists for today's webinar, and to all of you, our participants. We at RU Forum greatly appreciate your participation this afternoon. I implore you to join in the discussion and pay keen attention to the propositions the panelists make. Kindly note that this webinar is being transmitted to you in English, French, and Arabic. And please feel free to make your comments in the chat facility of the platform, as well as ask questions in the question and answer box. Allow me this opportunity in closing to also invite you to join us on 30th September 2020 for yet another very exciting webinar on students connecting globally to visualize and re-engineer universities for a better world post-COVID-19. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for those opening remarks. And indeed, actually, we do thank RU Forum for setting up this open space for discussions and collaboration, because clearly the digital learning gap cannot be breached without like a collaboration between the different universities. And an initiative like the AFRIDA is something that hopefully will contribute to breaching this gap and setting up the continent on a trajectory where we can find the right formula for blended learning and how do we deploy online education into our universities. I would, before starting, like kicking off the discussions and the panelists, I would just add a few comments with regard to the questions. Please, if you have questions regarding the interventions, please use the questions and the Q&A section to address either open questions to all panelists, or if you have a question specifically for a panelist, you can target them with that question. And I would actually invite the panelists to also respond to those questions that they're able to do. This way, actually, we can keep the interaction going during this webinar and be able to help answer as many questions as we can. Of course, we will have a separate Q&A session where we could actually take additional questions or respond to questions that actually have not been answered, but please use that. So today, so for the first panelist, I'll be asking Mr. Berthelemy to share with us his thoughts. And Mr. Berthelemy is actually the Digital Learning Manager at the Center of Agriculture and Bioscience International, the organization called CABI. He oversees the CABI Academy and the digital learning initiatives. So the questions that we would like Mr. Berthelemy to help us or enlighten us on are, what would be like the best practices for designing online learning, especially in this context where a lot of professors are and universities are in a situation where they need to actually adopt quicker ways of designing, finding like a platform where to publish this content and be able to service their students. Best practices for designing this online learning, and what's the criteria for choosing the right element platform to be able to deliver the content that's being created.
Thank you, Rafiq, for that introduction. And yes, I will try and address those questions about best practices, and I will also be looking at how you can go and choose a platform and the sorts of things you might be looking for in choosing and using an online platform. I'm going to be trying to keep an eye on the question and answer panel as we go, but forgive me if I need to, if I miss your question, but we'll come back to it later. So first off, I was talking about this webinar with some of my colleagues who are based in Africa, and one of them came back to me and raised the question about what does online learning actually mean to many people across the continent. And I know this is generalizing massively. And so it seems that many people, and also it's here in Europe as well, many people have taken online learning to be someone presenting a lecture using Zoom or Teams or something like this. And it's just taking what we do face-to-face and putting it online, just doing a lecture. And I'd like to propose that online learning is bigger than that, and it offers far more opportunities than just delivering a lecture online. So first off, I would say, and from my experience and my reading and research, that good online teaching is really based around individuals and small groups. And when we talk about a lecture going out to people, there's still an individual that you're communicating with. So it's very rare that you will actually have a large group interacting online. So I'm going to focus on individuals and small groups. And when we're talking about online or even just generally distance education, we talk in two terms. We've got asynchronous and synchronous. Synchronous are the things that you do at the same time. Asynchronous are the things that you can do at different times. One of the beauties of distance education is that it allows people to choose when they interact with the course. And this is one of the major selling points for all the various open universities around the world, is that people don't have to be in a particular place or at a particular time to be able to take part in the course. And so I've listed here, I'm not going to read them out, but these are the activities that you could do either with an individual or a small group, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous. And I'd welcome any questions and comments about those. But the key things are that an individual can consume things when they need to, but they can also create things when they need to. The times when an individual would need to be synchronous at the same time, at the same time as their colleagues, their other students, is when they need to actually discuss something, or whether you've got Q&A. Now, you can do that asynchronously. You can use discussion forums to ask questions and things like that. But sometimes you need to be all in the same room together, an online room, to be able to really discuss things in a deep way. And with a small group, you can also, as I said, you can discuss things online, but sometimes it's better to be discussing things synchronously. So just taking those ideas in mind, there are a number of approaches to designing online teaching, and I'm going to focus on the teaching because we can't design learning. Learning is something a learner does themselves. The only input we can have is on the teaching side of it. So I'm going to focus on the teaching. And this is one model that you can use. Is that you can have an online event, like an event like this, for example. And that event is where you can discuss the difficult things, you can work on questions together, you can create things together. I would say, and I'm usually very strong on this, it's really inefficient and wasteful to use an online event to present information. It's because you're getting lots of people together at the same time, which is very expensive in terms of their time, just to present information when they could be done in many other ways. So use the online event to do the things that you can only do when everyone is together, but then surround it with asynchronous activities, things that you do before the event or things that you do after the event. And I've put some examples there. So before the event, you could ask them to read something, to watch a video, try some questions or whatever. And then after the event, you can ask them to do an assignment, write an essay, discuss something in a forum. Yeah, there are a whole host of different types of activities that you could ask them to do. And the key thing here is that we're turning the classroom on its head. There's an idea that came from Harvard University of the flipped classroom, or it's a peer support model, I think it's called, which uses the lecture time, the time when we're all together, to discuss things and work on things together, but has all the preparation and information presentation before and after the event. That's one model. Another model is where you have cohort-based teaching. So you have a group of people working through a course together, but with no events at all. And I've done this. I've been a student on this. I've taught on these sorts of courses. And the tutor's role is to moderate the conversations that are going on. And those conversations are based around activities. And then you might have an assignment at the end where the tutor does the marking. Hello.
Wow.
Okay, I'll carry on. That's one model. You can have cohort-based teaching. Another model is having online teaching, but without any cohorts. This is the model that has been used by Athabasca University, an open distance education university in Canada, where The students work through a series of activities and reflections and assignments, and the tutor provides individual support to that student. And there's no interaction between the students in this scenario. So lots of different models. And the key thing when we come to choosing and using our platforms and our technology is that we need to find a platform that fits the model or the models that we are going to use. And it will be different designs and different platforms for different contexts. So I don't want to tell you this is how you must do it. I'm providing some examples, and you need to work out what's the best one for your particular context. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on this now. These are the considerations that I take into account when I'm choosing and using a platform. So let's start with the choosing side of things. So for me, one of the key things in a university context is that the platform needs to be flexible, because different courses will have different requirements, different tutors will want to work in different ways, different students will need to work in different ways. So the platform needs to be flexible to be able to cope with lots of different models. The platform needs to be open. And when I say open, I mean in two contexts, in two ways. So it needs to be open to be able to connect to other systems. So I've listed down at the bottom there a number of different sorts of systems that you might need as part of a whole online learning infrastructure. So you've got the main platform, the course management platform in the middle, but that needs to connect with your student record system to be able to get all the students and their courses into the course management system, and to be able to pass their transcripts, their assessment results back to the student record system. You might need to integrate it with a lecture capture system if you're still doing face-to-face lectures. You might need to connect it with an online meeting system like Zoom, for example, so you can schedule meetings from within the course management system. You might need to join it all together with some sort of single sign-on. Maybe you're using Office 365 or the Google Suite, and you need to connect things so that people can only log in once, and then they can access all the other bits that they need to connect to. So it needs to be open in that sense, but it also needs to be open so that you can make changes to it. And for me, that's really important. There's no one size fits all for different universities. So there are some big platforms like Blackboard and Desire to Learn and Canvas. Yeah. Yes, Canvas, not Canvas. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There are some big platforms where they control it and you can't really change it. But there are some other platforms, and Moodle is the one that comes to mind, but you could also use WordPress or Grav, a number of other systems where you can make changes as an institution to how the platform actually works to make it work for you. The third consideration is that it must be usable, and particularly for the teachers and for the students. And so these are the people that are going to be spending a lot of time in it. And if you want to make it as efficient as possible, it needs to be designed around their needs and how they want to work. So usability, user friendliness, user experience, all these terms all talk about making sure the platform is designed around the needs of its users. And I would suggest that in an African regional context, the ability to be able to work offline is very important. One of the key things that has come through from our research at CABI is that across many parts of the continent, not all, but across many parts of the continent, internet bandwidth is a major issue. And so being able to work offline will help reduce the impact of that issue. And finally, it needs to be scalable so that the platform can grow as you grow the numbers of students, as you grow the number of courses, and so on. So that's the choosing bit. Actually, that's the easy bit. The hard piece is the using the platform, getting the best out of it. So one of the things you'll have to do is make sure it's hosted in a place that works well for you, that it's on servers that can cope with the numbers of people, the numbers of users. But you also need to look at the administration needs of this platform. That's why I would suggest tying it into a student record system is really important, because it means you administer the students once in the student record system. You don't have to do it again in the course management system. And one of the biggest headaches I've come across is when we try and set up a platform and try and do all the administration within that platform when it's not really designed to do that. So you want to try and keep those administration needs as low as possible. You will need to consider support both for the teachers, but also the students. For many people, this will be new to them. Not necessarily going online new, but teaching and learning online will be new, and they will need a lot of hand-holding, a lot of help. And I would be focusing quite a lot on the systems that you put in place to help users, whether that's providing information, providing access to experts, providing even just a phone number or a WhatsApp group so people can ask questions. And then finally, and most importantly, is the professional development that's essential. Someone made a comment very early on in this webinar in the chat room that the professional development, the enabling teachers to learn how to get the best out of these systems is critical. Because without that, you will find, and we found in the UK, when people started putting in these sorts of platforms, all they were was just a dumping ground, a place to deposit PDFs and PowerPoints, and there was no teaching going on. It was just a content store. If that's all you want, you don't need a teaching platform. You just need a content store. But if you want to teach, and if you want people to learn and be guided through courses, then you need people to be taught and to learn how to get the best out of them. So just finally, to finish off, I hope I'm not over time. We chose for the CABI Academy, the Moodle platform, mainly because of its flexibility. We needed to be able to offer a number of different types of things within it. So we've got formal courses. We're also putting e-textbooks into the platform. We've got informal resources that people can search for and go and access when they need it. And we've got communities of practice, people discussing things. So that's why we chose Moodle, because of its flexibility, but also because of its openness. Moodle might not be the right answer for you, but it was for us. And if anyone wants to talk about Moodle, WordPress, and so on, please let me know. So Rafiq, I will hand over back to you. Thank you, and I hope I'm not over time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bertolini. This is very truthful insights about your experience and what you recommend for other universities basically to do for the digital learning. I would highlight one thing that you mentioned, the no one size fits all. This is very important, and every university has to look at the way they're delivering courses, their objectives, and see how they can actually build this kind of experience. So thank you very much for those thoughts. Our next panelist is His Excellency Mr. Chief Tesele Maseriban. He's actually the Minister of Communications, Science and Technology, and the member of the parliament representing the Basotho National Party in the Kingdom of Lesotho. Your Excellency, what we would like you to share with us is your point of view about the need of policy changes, investments that are needed both on a national and private sector, especially that with this context of COVID, the imminence of the online learning, a lot of governments have been actually facing this kind of challenges where actually they needed to change policies to be able to adopt and adapt basically their current laws to support online learning and so on. They needed to do investments, especially telecom and so on. And we would like to you to share those your insight about that, and if you have any experience in the Kingdom of Lesotho, actually that has been done in the light of the after the COVID-19. That would be a great thing. So just a reminder for all the panelists, so we're trying to have 10 minutes per panelist. So that's actually, we have a very busy agenda, and we're trying to stick actually to those timelines as much as possible. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very sorry that I was a little bit late, but can you hear me?
Yes, we do perfectly.
Okay, Rafik. I think it is very important to issue a statement that will say the COVID-19 global pandemic has changed how the world functions, and we all need to understand that we need to accelerate the fourth industrial revolution by the measures and solutions so that government and organizations cannot adopt their efforts to maintain business and operational continuity. If we don't adopt the 4IR in reforming our curriculums, our laws, or how do we approach, especially the education department in all levels, from primary to university. It will be just a waste of time. But COVID-19 has taught us a lesson that we need to change how we approach legislators. We need to change how we approach our industrialization sector in all sectors. Therefore, post-COVID-19 African universities should take an advantage. Intellectuals should come together and take this advantage and inform the world that, and put pressure on the world. We have African Union. They must be given an opportunity to put their issues at those platforms. That leaders in Africa must understand there is a need for change post-COVID-19. In Africa, coming down to SADC, in all sectors of Africa, in all corners of Africa, we should use that opportunity. The world, UN, must also support this initiative, that post-COVID-19 Commonwealth, the world itself, we must put pressure. Intellectuals must come on board, that let us now adopt the 4IR way of thinking, because that's where the world, COVID-19 has put the world at the moment. Now, there are opportunities that, considering the digital era, we need to have a unique and comprehensive digital library for the African university. That will cater for poor and rich. You see, this issue of having two different of people, it is the way that God has. That's how, as in Africa, we've got very high rich people, very rich people, very poor people. Now, how do they have access to digital library? Most of them, even if rich or poor, they have a phone, smartphone. They can have access to listen to a radio station or to listen to televisions. So if we don't put pressure to our investors, to our governments, to our institutions, that let us focus on having a digital library so that at least education can access rich and poor remote people who are living in remote areas, who are living in towns, who are living in rural areas. But the challenges of connectivity also, it is a very serious challenge. Internet connectivity in the rural areas, it is very expensive. In Lesotho, it is very expensive. You find that you take 5 years to finish the whole country ring to have internet connectivity. Because some areas we don't have electricity, some areas are hard to reach, but there is a school there that we need to support on e-education platform. A portal that will be using different languages. The issue of languages must be accommodated in this portal. We must understand the issue of people will learn by understanding language at first. You know, when you get born, you are greeted in the family by your own language. Yes, we need to agree. English is English, French is French. But my own language, Sesotho, there must be a portal that will accommodate so that I can understand much more quicker for output, a quicker output. Life is like this these days. If I don't understand English well, or if I don't understand French, if I don't understand Sesotho, or if I don't understand any language, but let us agree that it is right time that we have a portal that will be using different languages in collaboration with associated universities around Africa. There are so many African languages in Africa, many. But you go to Europe, you find also there may be 4 or 5 languages. In Africa, you've got so many languages. Why don't we find a way that we can be able to deliver the state-of-art interface that will also allow users to visit online collections, search collections database, access to images of collections items and historical archives, such as manuscripts. Just to tell you a story, Rafik and everybody, that we have just finalized our digital addressing in Lesotho. Look how long did it take us? But we did it, the project was before COVID-19. But now, post-COVID-19, we now have digital address. But after a long time, after maybe 10 years, we've been struggling. So I'm just saying, let us find issues that will be able to support post-COVID-19 online learning opportunities. Challenges, we understand challenges are there, but let us also include in our strategy that the catalog should provide users with vast collection of educations, journals, books. Thank you for the previous presenter here, who was presenting, Mr. Mark. Very impressive, even though I entered in the last 2 minutes, but very impressive. Some of the challenges that we should also consider is lack of infrastructure and support across Africa. But we need support. There's no way that we cannot emphasize this issue of support. We need to have a very smart budgeting systems that will be able to be a smart budget, rather than having all type of government budget. We need to influence governments across the board that let us now develop smart and well-researched scientific budgets to run our governance. Cost of data it's a fundamental challenge. Data it's a challenge to us in Africa. And when you facilitate e-learning, e-health, or any e-sector, we have to agree that we need to deal with this issue. We need to face it and come out with solutions, how we fight the price of data. Gentlemen and ladies, I think the issue of internet access, I did touch on it. But let us agree that the internet connectivity, how do we access internet in most of our university or our schools, it is not only in high learning institutions. Primary, you can't build future generation if we don't consider looking at the primary level. Maybe from grade 6, those schools must be accommodated, that they must be connected, so that by the time you're preparing these students for their secondary or high school, preparing for them for the university, they already understand digitalization, because we are living in the globalization environment, and they have to understand, they have to start learning as young as they can be. I can't leave the issue of training and being very professional development in Africa. We must be robust training to our teachers. We must try and find how best we can be able to incorporate Minister of Health across Africa, across the world, to have their own forum where they understand that they have to budget for training and development. Because if we don't train our teachers, and it's huge numbers, you must remember that some of the countries in Africa have huge numbers. The wage bill it is so huge in our countries because we have a lot of teachers. So if we don't train them online, if we don't have good teachers that can be digital teachers that will be able to be, because we can't just drop them off because we are talking about digitalization, but we need to find how best can we accommodate them as we go forward. I'm not quite sure, Farid, if I'm out of my time, but I think we'll take questions, then I'll be able to clarify some. But the experience is very interesting. We are running our cabinet with a virtual cabinet. We are learning in Africa. We are learning in Lesotho. There's so many issues that we are taking advantage as Minister of Science and Technology because of COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and very insightful thoughts about the need of infrastructure, the local languages, the access to the shared resources, and the need for the infrastructure. I think we'll have an opportunity to get back to some of those, because these are some of the important challenges that most countries and universities are facing. Thank you very much. So for our next panelist, we're having Professor Lereshi, Kathleen Moore-Lereshi. She's a member of the RUForum International Advisory Panel. She previously served as the chair of the RUForum Technical Committee and executive director of Economics Africa in South Africa, and she led the Natural Resource Economics chairs at the University of Zimbabwe, where she was based for 22 years. So, Professor, what would be great is if you could put in context a little bit, like the changes, both demographic, economic, that the world is seeing today, and how the digital learning, the online learning can somehow adjust or help solve some of those issues and create new opportunities. And at the same time, like with your experience in this field, how can actually professors and universities that are looking for creating new content speed up this process so that actually they can become like have content that they can use in their courses? Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you very much, Rafiq, Your Excellency, and everybody, all the participants. It's great to have you all here. And I think there's been a lot of interesting chat and questions on the side as well. I would like to take you up, Rafiq, and just say this whole issue is really urgent, and to agree that we need to take advantage of the momentum that has been created through the COVID and Corona crisis. And it really has, I think, highlighted how important it is, but this has always been critical. And if you think that by 2050, Africa will account for 1/4 of the world, that means that we have a huge presence in the forthcoming market. And we also need to be able to develop our own capacities at a much faster pace so that we are really able to take advantage of that youth dividend. And we have to be aware that we simply don't have the capacity at the moment to increase our faculty and our universities at the pace that is necessary. So we have to find all sorts of other ways. And I think that I'm very pleased to hear His Excellency saying how, recognizing that the governments have taken on board how important it is. And I think a few of the participants have been writing in, somebody, Tom Amuti, I think you mentioned also how this crisis has helped to crystallize the whole issue. And I think that it's really, really important to keep in mind the inclusivity, because it has the potential, this change has the potential for us to be very much more inclusive, or it could end up actually increasing inequity if we do not make a concerted effort to reach out to include all those who don't have access. His Excellency was referring to the remote areas. There's also women and people who perhaps aren't given the access, the same access. So we have to find and tailor our policies to ensure that we can make it inclusive. And one of the advantages of all this new 4IR and the e-learning and the technology is that we can. So my plea is that we do. The other is to remember that the world is changing so fast that we have to be adaptable. We have to be able to change fast. And this again is where this technology allows us the ability to be able to take that on board and change. Our problem is that our institutions, government, but also very much at university level, tend to have been historically very unadaptable, very inflexible. And so we have to be able to take that on board. And our universities have to start seeing how they can meet differentiated student audiences, so that there will be students who are able to attend and discuss and be almost the same as having it on campus and face-to-face. But there will be many students that need the asynchronous, that need to be able to access the information at the times and at the places where they are able to. Or there will be people who will need to be able to take some modules and then have a break for a while and then take them again. And it is in these ways that we are actually also able to accommodate people. I think particularly of postgraduate programs, it's much better for women now, makes it much more accessible if they're able to carry out their postgraduate degrees in modules, if they're able to maybe only attend for a short period away from their homes, if they're going to participate in regional or international programs. So there are all sorts of exciting things there, but it's extremely important that universities start putting in place systems that will allow them to fairly rapidly approve different styles of degree programs, tailored to different audiences. So look at micro degrees, we look at all this, there's lifelong learning. Because things are so adaptable, we have to be able to have many different small short courses available to people as they change. There's no linear progression in our careers anymore. We don't even know what jobs are going to be available in 10 years' time, in 5 years' time. So we have to keep reaching, and we have to be sure and take advantage of the kinds of platforms that Mark was talking about, where we can make accessible in different formats, in different forms of degrees, using all these different technologies. And yes, we really are able to reach at scale, and we will actually only be able to do it if we reach out at scale, because developing the online learning so that it is really effective is not cheap. There is a lot that's involved in it. But once you can take it to scale, then the cost per unit comes right down and you are able to reach much more widely. So one of the things that is so important for our universities is for us to be able to collaborate. And as Rafiq mentioned, there are many ways in which we are able to take advantage of what is out there. We don't have to be the individual university or the individual lecturer even who was the total arbiter of the complete course design. We are able to access, and we must do it, courses and modules out there, which we can keep changing so that we have flexibility and adapt, and we can keep pace with what is happening in the world. There is, I mean, for the agriculture, because many of us in Reforum come with an agriculture background, the FAO has some really good course modules, IFAD, ICRISAT, there many others, CABI. There is so much, and many of them are quite happy for you to take that course module and to be able to adapt around it and make it relevant to where you are. Perhaps not to actually fiddle with the course module itself, but all the assessments and information you're providing and the interaction you're having with your students. What you need to do is to get your Senate, the University Senate, or the whatever governing bodies there are within the universities to accept different ways of putting together those courses. So I think that perhaps Reforum also needs to ensure that we are able to reach the vice chancellors, and there can be discussions at Senate level for how universities are going to enable their faculty. Then, of course, the question which many of you, even on the chat and the questions, Emmanuel, Ongaria, very many of you talking about access to devices, access to internet. Yes, I agree, those are real problems. But we have to not just sit back and think, oh, it's a problem and government must provide. We are going to be 250,000 of the world's population in 2050. These technical and communications companies, these internet companies and everyone else, we could be a very cheap way for them to establish their market presence, for them to establish market loyalty. And I think that universities and governments need to make much stronger cases for those interactions and for working with them. Governments, for their part, you don't have to provide all the money. How about giving bandwidth in return for free access to education by bandwidth data providers? There've been some really interesting and exciting stuff that the universities in South Africa managed to achieve with data providers and with supplying devices reasonably cheaply to all their students. Some of the bigger ones were able to keep records of how many of their students had access to devices and how many didn't, and actually get them to them. But of course, the poorer, less well-endowed universities with many more students who did not have access to devices have a more difficult problem. So they're having to overcome that by having centers of learning and centers of access to internet and so on. But I think that devices now are not that expensive. And again, I would appeal to your universities to get out there and get in touch with your device providers and make the business case for why it's in their own interests to provide the first devices and to provide the data. Strengthening the capacity of the administration, the lecturers, and even the students is extremely important and cannot be overemphasized. And the big one here is confidence. I think particularly with faculty who are older, who often tend to have the greatest sway in the senates and administration, they are concerned that they will no longer be relevant. But it's quite possible to show them. There are many different ways in which you can be delivering online, and it's going to be very differentiated. There are going to be roles for people who could be providing information, ideas, or stimulating new thinking. And at the same time, perhaps they're doing lots of research. And so they're providing feedback on what's happened to their research. There are going to be other of the faculty who are going to be developing courses and integrating what they've learned into their courses. And then there are going to be the others who are going to be very involved with tutoring and supporting and guiding. And all of those are very valuable inputs as part of it all. Assessment.
Professor, we have, so we're running a little bit over time. I'm sorry for interrupting, but you will have an opportunity to answer and clarify some of those things, because we're getting questions actually in line with those points, and then you'll have also some wrap-in time later. Thank you very much. Thank you. So our next panelist is my friend, Professor Joseph Moliaru-Wafula. He's the founder, director of the ICT Center of Excellence and Open Data, ICOD, at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology in Nairobi, Kenya. And he's the chair of CoData Kenya, a fellow of the Computers Society of Kenya and the Cambridge Commonwealth Society. So, Professor, it would be great if you could share some insights as well on like the current challenges, opportunities that we have today that are created by the shift to digital education post-COVID-19. And then if you have any learning lessons from your current experience at your university, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my slides. Okay, thank you very much, Rafik. This is a good opportunity to participate in this conversation around online learning. And I'm going to share specifically about Jomo Kenyatta University. Jomo Kenyatta University is started around 1977, and now you can tell how far we have come. We have about over 40,000 students and 800 academic staff who are delivering these courses. And so what I'm saying is that while we are speaking of COVID and the effect that it has brought, you realize that we are having a challenge of moving nearly 40,000 students to a new way of delivery. And we have to deal with almost 800 academic staff members who then need to be retrained, retooled, so that they can be able to deliver. So the university took this very, very serious. And there are opportunities that we found with this, both of us, the staff and the student, that we can actually access this training if it's delivered online from the comfort of where we are staying, and at any location. Some of us, I'm speaking, I'm not at the campus, and I can be able to continue teaching, which I've done. I've attended meetings, participated in many roles because of the new opportunities that we are seizing out of the situation we found ourselves in. There are also, of course, a continuity that now students that the university has adopted or has gone into this way, that they can continue to do their studies without interrupting, because when we have so many students, like, as I said, over 40,000 students, sometimes we stagger some of those courses because they are popular and we have very many students and the resources are limited, and therefore some have to stay out while others are on campus. But now this isn't any problem because the students themselves know it. Now that then has allowed more students also to come on and to continue, for those who are able to continue and fast track their courses. Of course, there are benefits like travel and accommodation, so they don't have to live on the campus. And that is a great opportunity, and some parents are happy with that, that then their children can learn from home. All they care is to provide internet connectivity to these people. So the general challenges that we faced are, and I would like to highlight, is the rethinking and the designing of how the delivery is going to be done by most of our colleagues. Most of them are used to a very traditional way of delivering, and now this has put a lot of pressure on a number of us, and that is a great challenge. Of course, the challenges of repurposing, what do you do with the halls that are going to be empty and the lecture rooms? Maybe then the university, then that's a challenge to them. If that continues, if this becomes a new norm, what's going to happen to this? Some of these facilities are leased, for example, in urban expensive places where rent is very high. Maybe then the university has to rethink whether to leave this out or something like that. Of course, we have employees who work on service delivery. For instance, those who do catering division. If there are no students physically on the campus, then our catering department is going to shrink considerably. And that then means a university thinking of laying off some workers or keeping them until maybe we'll have the same population, but that is a challenge. Of course, the students are very fully aware that this has given an opportunity that the university needs to adjust their fees downwards because they are not on campus. They believe by being on campus, there are certain charges that they pay for. Then how does the university factor out and review the fee they charge the students? And more importantly, universities and learning institutions, the climax of it is always the examination. Now, administering exam remains a challenge, and we need to think carefully on building and maintaining the trust that we've always had before, even when we migrate to digital online systems. So then that begs a question of which technologies do we select? How do we select? What do we base on to select? And what is the competencies that we need to acquire in order to deliver, including supervision of exams, what we normally refer to as, of course, administering of examination. That is a very important issue. We'll look into it. Practical courses like medicine, engineering have had to be left out because they have a bigger chunk of portion that they have to have hands-on or face-to-face engagement. So that then has been an issue to deal with. So the lessons and interventions that we have taken as a university, that's Jomo Kenyatta University, is to train staff. And we have selected 2 platforms. We have a platform which is under a School of Distance Learning, and we use Moodle. And there's a Kenneth conference facility. Kenneth is one of the NRELs in Kenya, which has brought together very many universities. In fact, over 17 learning institutions, higher learning institutions with connectivity. but they also have a conference learning facility. And therefore, they've offered what I would call redundancy, the best redundancy we can ever have, because as a university, the resources, you can have a downtime. And therefore, you need an alternative off-campus, independent platform that you can confidently put your content. And this is where we've put and partnered with, and this is working us very well. Trainings are ongoing, they're scheduled for different groups, cohorts of experts, and every training that is offered is also recorded, so that then anyone who missed this can go and review or can join and be able to cope and learn and deliver your lectures and materials properly. So that's a very important infrastructure support as well we are getting from that. Also, the university has made arrangement with the infrastructure internet service provider. We have the telecom internet service provider that is offering subsidized services to our staff and students, and they're even issuing SIM cards and 1 GB of data bundles per day for our students and staff, so that we close the gap of affordance. And it's really working very well. And this is something that other leading ISPs in the country and in Africa should emulate. And this is solving a great bill. Now, with regard the fee issue, to what extent this can be reduced, I think our Senate has deliberated on this and in consultation with the students and agreed to a between 5 to 10% reduction in the other traditional fee, so that then can be also boost the kitty for the students to pay for internet access from wherever they are. And also a good thing is, from a government standpoint, power can be an issue. And in Kenya during this COVID, I think we are grateful that our president and the government decreed that no one will be disconnected from the mains for lack of payment of your bills. So while this opportunity lasts, we are being able to cover this. Then I think better policies should come in to make this sustainable. We've got all postgraduate students doing oral exam, defenses. The Senate has approved, and we are getting all our defenses being done online. So this is something very, very good, and good practices that we can take home are here. But then we need to develop online learning and training manuals, so that students and staff can continually refer to them until when the next one is presented. We need the regulators. In our case, we have the Commission for University Education approving our regulations, so that we don't find ourselves doing exams online teaching, and then someone gets up to say that we are offering a substandard or compromise any standards. So the regulators need to follow and be in tandem with the changes that are coming. And this is important for the future. Of course, we need to think about redundancies. Now the budget processes of universities and learning institutions should mainstream strong infrastructure like servers that can support such facilities. Obviously, having in mind working with another redundancy option, or even an equal measure, like we've done in Kenya with the Candid. Documentation of what we're doing, we need not to forget, is so important, because then when it comes to audits or proof of support, then that will have to be important to be produced. So in order to decide on the best tooling that we require, we propose that some 6 key parameters that one needs to look into. Ensure that the integrity is very important of the platform you pick. Our first presenter talked of those platforms. You can interrogate them on integrity, pricing, institutional data control, so that you don't lose your data on your control. And that will be an issue, because then as a university or an institution, this is so important. Integration effort, people preparation effort, robustness of it, all these things are quite important. And you can look at some platforms that we are considering, like responders, lockdown browsers, safe exam browsers, among others, are some of the tools that one can look at. So that is so important, and I would want to end my presentation at that. and maybe engage in conversation after that. Thank you, Rafik, for the opportunity, and all those who are
Thank you
listening.
very much, Professor Wafula. Thank you for
Welcome.
sharing your thoughts around the topic. So our next panelist is Professor Eugène. Professor Eugene is the director of the Training and Research Institute in Computer Science and the professor at the Institute of Mathematics and Physics at the University of Abomey-Calavi, République du Bénin. Professor, what we would like to hear from you are basically your thoughts around and views on the quality of online courses, because there's something that a lot of times people may think that actually there is a difference in the quality of the online courses versus face-to-face. If you can cover that, and then if there are any thoughts around best practices that have been actually in your university. You can intervene in French or in English. We have the translation, so it's up to you. Thank you very much.
OK. Merci beaucoup pour ce webinaire organisé par le Forum. Je réponds au nom de Eugène Ezi. Alors, en ce qui concerne la préoccupation qui est posée, j'ai résumé cela en quelques slides. Alors, en guise d'introduction, il faut reconnaître que l'apparition du COVID-19 n'a pas que posé des dégâts, mais a aussi permis à ce que nous puissions réfléchir ensemble et trouver des solutions qui se posent à nous dans plusieurs domaines. Et il faut remarquer que des entreprises se sont rapidement organisées pour donner plus de poids au télétravail, par exemple. Alors, le télétravail est aussi passé du côté de l'enseignement avec l'utilisation abondante de l'enseignement à distance, notamment l'apprentissage en ligne. Alors, en termes d'opportunités et de défis liés à l'apprentissage en ligne, il faut premièrement remarquer la continuité des services parce que durant la période de COVID qui continue toujours, plusieurs entreprises ont essayé, malgré la distanciation, de trouver des alternatives pour continuer les différents services. Alors, l'autre élément important qu'il faut observer suite à l'apparition du COVID, c'est que la pollution est réduite parce qu'il y a moins de mouvements, que ce soit par avion, que ce soit par des bus et automobiles. L'autre élément important concernant les défis, il faut remarquer que la non-disponibilité de l'énergie électrique est un problème observé un peu partout en Afrique. Et quand on prend les outils d'apprentissage en ligne, il faut avant tout avoir l'énergie électrique pour leur fonctionnement. L'autre difficulté observée, c'est la connexion Internet qui n'est pas disponible partout et parfois les coûts sont élevés à la fois pour les étudiants et pour les enseignants. Il faut aussi souligner que le matériel informatique n'est toujours pas disponible pour les étudiants. Quand je considère par exemple les disciplines de sciences sociales, sciences économiques et juridiques, le nombre d'étudiants est très élevé et malheureusement, ils ne disposent pas de ces outils pour pouvoir suivre des cours en ligne. L'autre challenge est la formation des enseignants et des différents acteurs des outils d'apprentissage. Parce que la technopédagogie qui est considérée ici n'est pas identique à celle que nous observons pour des cours en présentiel. Tout à l'heure, vous aviez remarqué lors d'une présentation qu'il faudrait scénariser des contenus pour des cours en ligne, parfois des activités synchrones, des activités asynchrones, et tout cela doit être coordonné de façon très efficace pour de meilleures performances. L'autre élément concernant les appréciations des frais de formation, il faut remarquer que les activités en ligne demandent un investissement supplémentaire pour les apprenants, de sorte que il nous faut absolument faire une étude prospective pour bien apprécier comment réviser ces coûts-là en faveur des étudiants. Alors l'autre élément, c'est qu'il faut absolument associer les différents acteurs de télécommunication. Parce qu'un cours en ligne suppose à des moments donnés des travaux synchrones et des travaux asynchrones nécessitant la connexion des étudiants. Alors, en termes de choix de plateforme, alors, il y a eu déjà M. Barthélémy qui a présenté quelques caractéristiques. Alors, j'aimerais ajouter ici que le système LMD nous oblige à penser davantage à la mobilité des apprenants. Alors, je crois qu'avoir des plateformes, disons, régionales serait une opportunité davantage intéressante, surtout pour la mobilité des apprenants, et cela va passer nécessairement par l'harmonisation des programmes de formation. Alors, concernant la qualité des cours en ligne, et là, c'est un défi important parce que il est important qu'il y ait des évaluations par les pairs, parce que ce n'est pas normal qu'un enseignant, à lui tout seul, mette un cours en ligne et dit bon, qu'il le met à la disposition des apprenants. Il faudrait que le cours soit de très bonne qualité et donc la qualité des cours en ligne, leur évaluation viendrait des pairs pour que le partage de ces cours en ligne soit effectivement une chose sérieuse pour faciliter la mobilité des étudiants des semestres à un autre tel que recommande LMD. Alors, je vais parler de la politique éducative. À ce niveau-là, il faut que le gouvernement davantage s'attarde sur cette problématique parce que les TIC sont non seulement importantes pour, disons, des services au niveau, pour la population, mais c'est également important dans le domaine de l'éducation. Ce qui veut dire qu'une meilleure coordination entre les différents États et les opérateurs de télécommunications pourrait donner un atout important pour que les populations puissent bénéficier de ces outils-là et dispenser des enseignements de qualité à travers les différents pays. Alors, qu'est-ce que je peux partager avec vous concernant l'expérience que nous avions vécue à l'Institut de formation et de recherche en informatique? Alors, au début de la pandémie, il faut remarquer que nous avions échangé avec les différents enseignants et les étudiants pour leur montrer l'importance de passer à des enseignements en ligne. Alors, l'adhésion n'a pas été facile, mais tout le monde a compris que c'était l'alternative crédible qui s'offrait à nous tous. Donc, des formations ont eu lieu. Ensuite, il y a eu des cours en ligne, notamment en utilisant les outils de visioconférence. Ensuite, avec le confinement qui était à un moment donné passé au déconfinement, nous avions eu la chance de passer à l'apprentissage en classe inversée. De sorte que les étudiants viennent désormais au campus par groupe réduit pour des enseignements au vu de les accompagner pour les examens. Donc, cette pratique nous a aidés à effectivement finir l'année académique et actuellement, nous sommes en train de préparer la nouvelle année. L'autre élément qu'il est important de souligner, c'est que notre gouvernement a décidé que toutes les universités optent pour des cours en ligne en mettant à disposition une plateforme. Donc, il y a une plateforme nationale pour toutes les universités pour les cours en ligne. Les formations se font pour que des enseignants s'intègrent dans cette dynamique-là. Voilà rapidement ce que je peux dire concernant
merci beaucoup.
Cette expérience-là. La dynamique se poursuit énormément et des expériences intégratives incluant d'autres pays seraient les bienvenues pour pouvoir véritablement avancer de façon collégiale et communautaire dans cet apprentissage en ligne dans nos différentes universités. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, professeur. Juste question de temps, donc on est un peu en retard. Donc, je vous remercie et on peut reprendre un petit peu s'il y a d'autres points, on peut les reprendre tout à l'heure, soit dans la session des questions-réponses ou bien dans la clôture de la session de clôture. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Professor. Our next part of this webinar is going to be a quick discussion. So we're inviting Professor Lubega, who's actually, sorry, just a second, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Nkumba University, Uganda. He's previously served as the Makerere University, in Makerere University as the Deputy Dean and the head of the Information Technology Department in the College of Computing and Information Science. So Professor Lubega will be responding or elaborating on some issues raised by the panelists and sharing his own experience. I'm sorry, Professor, we're quite a bit behind. So I would appreciate if you can basically intervene in about 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafik. for that introduction. I would want to also first thank the panelists for a job well done. To Alice for a very good introduction. That was very good. And I want to take it on from there, that you brought in very well AfriDAP. And I must say, if we had taken up and implemented AfriDAP, I'm sure many African universities will be in a better position within this pandemic than they are in now. I'll discuss that much further. But I want to say once again that the actual lockdown that many of the education institutions have faced across the world due to COVID has put many of the students and parents at stake. Many of them wondering what it's going to be in terms of their studies and being able to study at home. And the reason is that many of these institutions were not prepared to undertake education beyond their physical boundaries. In a result of the substantial gaps that are within our educational sector, and majorly relying on how we prepare our teachers to effectively handle teaching and learning within uncertain times like we are having right now. I must say that when we continue talking about online learning, there is quite a lot that comes into play. There's so many opportunities that are there and some challenges, but which can be avoided. I just want to pick on some of the opportunities because I have very little time. I'll just rush through many of these things as a discussant because a lot has been discussed by my colleagues, the panelists, and I have to just add to what they've actually been saying. Some of the opportunities that exist include the ability for students to study ubiquitously, that is from anywhere at any time under their wish. That's one of the major opportunities that online learning brings to us. Creating a level playing field in terms of learning. With online learning, there's the ability that even the 50-year-old can go into class with a 20-year-old without any problem. There are a lot of emerging partnerships that are brought in by online learning. That 2-3 universities can come together and deliver a course without any problem. These are emerging partnerships. We have seen what we would call education institutions enriching themselves in form of delivering using multiple media within the online learning, as compared to the tradition where only probably the chalk and board, but here there is the ability to use the multiple media learning to deliver. The opportunity to utilize as much as digital resources and being shareable across board, that one book can be shared across 1 million students at the same time, which is not the case with our physical infrastructure. One book has to be borrowed by one and then you wait for the other and things of that kind. And then there's quite a lot of these resources which are open and free to support the online learners out there to enrich what they've just received from the class by their tutor or lecturer. seeing many institutions attaining what we call international education markets due to their online programs they are able to deliver, and so on and so forth. However, this does not take away some of the challenges that we are seeing today. And one of the major challenges we are seeing today in the online is the literacy, ICT literacy amongst the stakeholders. This is something impending online learning to really take root in Africa, especially. The teachers who I would call digital immigrants, being able to teach majorly the digital natives who are the students is a big, big challenge. Attitude and culture change is another. There are so many people who feel that when they go online, they actually lose their authority as lecturers in class. This has been discussed. It's a big impediment to online learning. We are actually seeing unprofessional etiquettes within the online classes. This is still a challenge, and it's not a surprise because people have not been prepared very well to go online and participate in all this. Students' engagement. Online, many of the students are not engaged, and it's just a part of the students that are engaged. And this largely depends on how the course has been developed, how many activities have been embedded within the course to be able to allow engagement to happen in the best way possible. Feedback is one of the other challenges, that students are not regularly receiving feedback the way they would have the feedback in a traditional class, and which is very, very, very important for them. Look at the volume of work. Initially, it's quite a lot of volume of work that the lecturers, if they are not prepared to work around this, they actually experience. So many digital students airing out a lot of views, and they are unable to be able to answer to them and things of that kind. Colleagues, there's quite a lot of these opportunities and challenges. How we deal with them and how we take the opportunities to drive us forward is very, 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 very important. Looking at which can be utilized for our online learning, as one of the panelists said, there is quite a lot to consider. But I just want to bring some of the things that are important in addition to what he said. Institutional policies are very, very important. What does your institutional policy say? Do you allow open resource, or you go for the proprietary sort of systems? That is very important. The cost involved in acquiring a platform. The panelists talked about the features and services, very, very critical. Is it reliable? The stability of the system, the flexibility, scalability, and even the security of the system you are trying to bring on board. Very, very important for you when you are deciding which one. Interoperability is another factor that needs to be considered going forward. When I see Rafik, I sense minutes running out. I'm going to have to jump certain things and then move straight to something I want to talk about. Okay, interoperability is one of the major things that you need to think about. The systems already in ground, can they interact with the new system you are bringing to the institution? Very, very, very critical. So looking at the quality of online courses and other factors you can consider when integrating online. One of the first things you have to look at is the foundation for quality online starts with the actual learning outcomes. What are the learning outcomes and how are they embedded in what you do in terms of the activities, in terms of the resources and things of that kind? So you really need to think about that. Going straight to the policy, which is the main thing I feel I need to talk about here. All institutions, all countries have what we call policies that steer them in implementing what they want to implement, whether they are national, whether they are institutional. But what we need to note that generic policies or frameworks like AFRIDAP are there to support us to be able to do things rightly and together, collaboratively. AFRIDAP was developed several years ago, but it has gone on improving to date. And it's one that was developed to support Africa in harnessing ICT to be able to. And one of the pillars in there is a pillar that is related to digital learning and sharing technologies to support effective teaching and learning. If we had implemented AFRIDAP, if we had support to implement AFRIDAP, by now we would not be struggling the way we are struggling in terms of teaching the students we need to teach. If we had already created repositories where we have localized content to support the teaching of our students in Africa, we would be already doing it the way we would want to do. The technologies to support learning would be able to deliver the way we would want to deliver. I can see Rafik. So I don't know if I've run out of time, but there's quite a lot I would have talked about, but because of time, I think I have to give you back the microphone. Over to
Thank you very much, Professor. Sorry about pressuring you a little bit on the time. We just accumulated quite a bit of delays from the interventions, all the interventions, and we're trying to catch up a little bit. So, so the next part of this webinar is around the question and answers. I've seen that there is more than 40 questions that have been already answered. There is also additional questions. So what we'll try to do is, like I collected a few of them and unanswered questions, and I would ask actually all the panelists to bring their cameras this time, but keep the microphone muted unless you are intervening. So the first question is for His Excellency, the Chief Tesele Maseriban, and the question is, how best could universities engage African governments to advocate for support to join Africa University's digital libraries? Your Excellency. Okay, we will move to the next question while waiting for His Excellency to actually join back. So the next one is actually for Professor K. I just lost the question. I think she already answered that. So one question that came was around examinations. Like we talked a lot about online learning. What does it mean for examinations? I know that Professor Eugene spoke a little bit about it. Any additional thoughts about how we can adapt examinations for this context? I see Professor Wafula. Are you? Do you signal me to answer that, or any other interest?
Yes, thank you very much, Rafik. I think with examinations, that is a very important measure of the success of our online teaching. because it becomes a bottleneck. It's easy to deliver the content, but ultimately, unless you examine the students and give them a grade, it's not possible to have completed a course. And as I speak, there are tools that one can use and adopt together with the existing platforms, which our first presenter did list, that you on your own way, and I had given a criteria there that you can interrogate the tools that are available in terms of costs, because they vary costs, in terms of how secure is your data, in fact, not secure, but more importantly, do you lose control of that data or is it in your hands? What are you prepared to compromise? You can also interrogate it in terms of integrity, interoperability, how it can patch with what you have, and the level of capacity it gives the examiner to supervise the exam. I've already seen some asking questions. How do you give continuous assessment tests? How do you monitor that there is no cheating? So there are tools that allow you to integrate with plagiarizing and anti-plagiarizing checks. I mean, so you can do that, and they are available. I wouldn't want to name the important tools you can use. I had mentioned in my presentation and listed some of them. So tools are available, and we should not shy away from them. There are tools that give you on the basis of the number of students. Some charge $2 for every student that is logged on. So if you have so many students, like we have 40,000 students, then your budget is going to be really huge. But you can pass that cost to students, because students pay for exams. There's an examination fee, they always are charged. So it shouldn't be a problem. One just needs to adjust within that. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anyone want to add some brief additional points?
Rafiq, can I come in?
Yes, please.
Yes, to add to what Wafula just said, the type of exam also matters. There are quite different types of examinations you can give out, but you can decide, for example, to give out what we call the open book exam, which is more of requiring the students to answer to application, things of that kind. And this one, despite that it's an online, you give the students ample time, 7 hours to attend to an exam, but within the 7 hours they have to submit. But all depends on how the exam has been set. And therefore, the teachers have to be well prepared in setting that type of examination. So there are quite a lot of ways on how, but I agree with Wafula, the tools are there and we just need to tap into them and see how we use them. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you very much for those clarifications. The next question, which comes back quite often, and we've seen it especially during the COVID-19, like the confinement and post-confinement, is around like the aspect of the cost and of course cost to the students themselves. Like the fact that we're switching to online education, what does it mean for the cost of the tuition fees and so on? And are there new business models that actually can be developed actually that would make benefit of the type of this new type of learning, so that actually we can generalize that? Any takers?
Can I come in on the first?
I think Professor K wanted to answer, and then you can.
Yeah, K can come in.
Jude, go ahead.
Okay, what I wanted to say around the cost that it will all entirely depend on what infrastructure the institution is putting together to be able to deliver an online course. Let's take an example. If you decide to go the proprietary way and acquire Blackboard, definitely such cost will end up onto the student. But if you decide to go the open source way and, for example, acquire Moodle, configure it to your needs, and the rest of other open source technologies, the cost will be so low that, again, it will just be a little of what the students should be paying. On the start, you have the cost being huge, but in the long run, the cost to the student has to go very low. So for a start, I know many students, many institutions will leave their fees almost at the same level, but 1 or 2 years, they will definitely have to come down because there's a lot what the student should not be paying for. Over to you.
Thanks. Yes, I think that we actually possibly have to realize that the other thing is that once they have this platform up and running, once the staff are aware of where they can access modules and how they can adapt them, the prices can come down. But much more so, the scale can be scaled right out so that your unit costs per student can come down. But there is going to be an intervening period. And in that intervening period, I think is probably a period when you could either you keep the fees the same as Prof. Lubega has mentioned, or we can actually perhaps look at governments actually subsidizing for a certain period the switch, on the understanding that it's going to mean that we reach so many more. I mean, we are going to have a massive demand for tertiary education. And the only way we will meet it is by really putting everything available in a much wider spectrum that can reach the people. But we will only reach our potential as Africa if we can ensure that those are good quality. So it is really in the interests of government, if we can get them to think midterm and long term for their countries, to help that change. And I think that because of the situation with Corona, governments are much more aware right now, but that won't remain. They have very short time periods that they think about things. So it's very important for universities to lobby hard and fast and support and be prepared to change themselves, to take up these ideas. I mean, Prof. Wafula and Prof. Lubega have been fighting these battles for decades, and I think they're beginning to see that their vice chancellors or their colleagues, in the case of you being a vice chancellor now, Jude, are actually realizing what they were going on about. But now is really important, and it is possible for the costs per student to come right down, but only once it is all set up. Even if you're using Moodle, you still have a lot of startup costs.
If you permit, Professor, I would just add one piece of data about the business model. And I'm not talking about universities in Africa, but also other universities worldwide, international, like Ivy League universities. Like the fact that with COVID that they've been closing campuses, there are universities that's actually decided not to open the campus for this exercise, and the fact that they have to deliver like their diplomas and so on, and recognize those education, like it's putting a lot of pressure on many of those universities to consider new ways of and new business models for the education, because the cost is not the same. And now we're recognizing that potentially an online learning could be as effective as a face-to-face class. At UM6P, we are also experimenting many other models, like including, like, for example, the School 1337, which is like a computer science school. There is no professors. It's full peer learning, but we have a kind of software that manages the curriculum, and this, like, attending this this class or this program is completely free for the students. And the reason we're able to do that is because the cost, like, it was a kind of capex that was put initially through like subsidies and so on, and then operations are almost like free. It's like the student attending the program, working together, and the quality of the students is pretty efficient. We're looking also at other programs where if you have the content, you have the infrastructure, like, you can offer those kind of programs much cheaper than you can do it in face-to-face setup, and actually reach many other students. So just like, so there are a lot of opportunities for new business models, like for tuition fees and education moving forward. Professor Wafula?
Yep, thank you very much. I just wanted to add that let's remember that when the TV was invented, those who had radios thought they will be out of business. Even those who are selling newspapers were even more worried. But still today, people buy newspapers, radios are still there, TVs are there. So what I'm seeing is a situation whereby is expanding the scope in which and means by which now people are going to learn, and making them more formal and acceptable. In fact, there was a time when people were not proud to have a degree through distance. We used to despise anyone who got a degree through distance learning. We thought you are not properly taught. For some reason, there was an era that was the issue. But as of now, it's now being accepted. And what this COVID has done to us is that stamp firm to our institutions to understand that this is a very important component that needs to be strengthened. And it's not only at the Senate of universities. We need the regulators, the policy makers to dive into this issue and firm it up while the opportunity lasts. I'm looking at this as an opportunity for us to bring this statement forward very strongly. The initiative which Forum did and built, I don't know, what was it called? You know, the instrument that is available to promote online learning may be in low tones, being spoken in low tones. This is the time we need to bring it up in high tones with the government, with the Senate, and drive it. So I do support that. While we are thinking that online should be cheaper, but remember, convenience costs. You know, we can also charge people, because if it becomes a preference, why should the price come down? I mean, the university we should also think of that convenience costs. So someone should pay for their convenience of not having to travel. There has to be something. So let's have all that in mind as we build that. But I really support that we need to make it affordable. We need to make product differentiation, and we need to justify why that needs to be the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Wafula. Another question that we have, looking at the international scene, like, what are the competitive advantages that like online education can bring? Like, compared to like, is that an opportunity for African university on the international stage? Like, as we know today, like when we look at universities or attending universities, many of the US or European universities can be actually preferred. But now that there is this online education, is that an opportunity to reset the ground? And is that a kind of opportunity that Africa needs to be seizing? What kind of opportunities are there?
I can say this, that the opportunity, one big opportunity, is to make university affordable, accessible, especially quality university education. Because most people in Africa would like to go to a credible institution. And what I mean is universities that have qualified quality of what makes a university of quality is the caliber of resource persons that they are there. And this kind of persons are not readily circulating, available as we would have liked to see. So this can give us an opportunity to have options of the very best we have in Africa being utilized, everywhere it's required and it's needed. And that is something we can take away with these opportunities that we have without compromising quality. So that to me is an opportunity we need to do, not only in terms of the human resource, even the infrastructure. I mentioned in my presentation the issue of federating the e-resources. This is a great opportunity. It's being advocated by African Open Science Platform. And when we talk of NRENs, these are regional blocks that were just basically connecting internet and giving it as a subsidized prices to the institutions. But they later on realized that they can do more services, like providing online e-repositories. His Excellency mentioned us creating digital libraries. This calls for use of resources in a more shareable manner, opening up and linking us up. So this is a chance to bring that conversation also on board, because when you just talk of online learning, it means much more. It means more resources also pulling together. And we need to bring that on board as well. Thank you.
Rafik?
Yes, Jude.
I just want to add to what Wafula has actually just said. If we, on the sharing, if we actually add the collaboration, we are seeing emerging collaborations between institutions now, that 10 universities can come together and deliver a program together. The richness that is brought in by that is so tremendous, because they learn from each other. Having one or two professors teaching from the different universities and attending, I'm telling you, that student will never be the same like the original student taking it from one university. So we need to think about such collaborations and stop thinking of delivering programs singly as universities, but move into the direction of offering programs that are collaborative regionally. And this is what AfriDAP tries to push for, that the time of sharing is now. It was yesterday, it is now. We need to move into that direction as African universities, because we don't have too much resources to waste on ourselves as single universities. But if we brought all it up together, we can be able to achieve a lot together as institutions in Africa.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those additional points. I have a question actually that probably Mark can answer. So how best can practical courses be taught and examined online? And I understand you're working with farmers and people in agriculture. There's a lot of practical aspects of the teaching that we need to do. How are you doing that, and how are you ensuring that actually you're getting the expected learning in this kind of practical?
Yeah. So if I used an example from our experience, we have a course that's designed to train people to identify pests and diseases in plants, to give them the skills to be able to ask the right questions about, is this a fungus, is this a disease, or whatever. And up till recently, that has been entirely face-to-face. But we've now created an entirely online self-study course to do that. And we're using a very simple method by giving people gradually increasing complexity, giving them photos of plants with particular problems and asking them to identify those problems. And the course gets harder and harder with more complex problems being presented. And we found that the students do get through and they do develop their skills. So that's giving them a practical skill, but done entirely online. There are some things that are very hard to do online. You know, there will be some field-based things that you really need to feel the plant or you know, feel the soil or whatever. But there's a huge amount that you can do online if we use our imagination to think about other ways of teaching than just presenting information. It's more about the activities that we give people to try out in a safe place the skills that they'll need. Does that answer the question, Rafiq?
Yes, that's an example. Anyone have some other ways to do that?
Add to that, I mean, I think we haven't started to tap into the potential for virtual reality. And if you think about it, they do pilot training, quite sophisticated, quite an extreme upgrading of existing pilots, use virtual reality. There is huge potential, which I'm too old to understand, but I'm sure that Jude and them are following all that's available on the 4IR. Now, I'm not saying that will be available everywhere, but that's even more support for the concept that we need to be offering as collaborations of universities, because they really are opportunities to make much more of the practical work available and accessible under new technologies. And that's only going to get even more so. Of course, in the end, people are going to have to practice, but they can be doing the practice themselves in their own work environments, and they can be filming it and sending it back to their course instructors.
I can also add to that, while what professors just said is the ultimate place where we're heading, in the meantime, I've seen, for instance, in our university, the arrangement that is being done for students in the medical school and engineering is that, you know, you're looking at, you want 5 or 10, groups of 10 at most in a lab, so that people they have the distance issues to be dealt with. So we're getting these students to come on board in turns. So it's a continuous, like a conveyor belt. So while you are away, you can continue learning the theories, and you are scheduled to come on campus in a smaller group, like say 10 or so that then you really have your hands-on feel of what needs to be done. So that in itself is giving still forward mobility, so that they don't stagnate because they don't have the practicals. Of course, again, I'll get back to the regulators. We have engineering boards. We have the boards that approve doctors. In every line of field, there is an acceptable limit of direct contact that they will demand of you. And I like the analogy of the pilots who use sophisticated simulators. And this is equally important. And the flyers around having used that kind of environment. So a combination of all these new ways of doing things has to be put together so that we continue to find solutions, but not to stagnate. But I believe with AI around, me being in computer science, this is one area where we are really thinking of how we can improve even those simulators and invite other minds to help us develop labs that can equally achieve the same experience working on a simulated environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a question addressed to me about UM6P support for African universities and how we can strengthen the online learning, including MOOC development. So I will take this one quickly. So UM6P has been actually working on many programs that are targeting like Africa in collaboration with Reform and other institutions. So we have made with the start of COVID, like we made some platforms available One is moocs.um6p.na, which is like a platform that has about 40 MOOCs available that can be reused. We hold, and we did it in collaboration with RUForum and EPFL in Switzerland, and we hold like training and coaching sessions for professors who are interested in actually incorporating this content in their trainings. There was also prépadigital.com, which is like, this is more for the French systems, like les classes préparatoires. That's like, it has more than 1,000 courses in math, physics, chemistry, and so on that we made available during COVID, basically for any university in Africa that's interested in using that. But then there are also other programs that we're doing in terms of capacity building, there is programs to help professors and technical staff and instructional designer build the capacity so that they can contribute to creating content in collaboration with RUForum. And then we have also a program to create 6 centers of excellency in terms of digital education in Africa that is ongoing. There was a call for a proposal basically that was done a couple of months ago, and actually we're in the process of finalizing that. So there's many opportunities, and our goal is to work very closely with the other partner universities and institutions in Africa to be able to help as much as possible for bringing those skills for capacity building in digital education. So with that, we will move to the next part and the final one. So if you can take about 4 minutes to share like the final thoughts for the panelists and conclude this session, this would be great. We'll go with the order that we started. So Mark, the floor is yours.
Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion about internet access and access to devices, things like that. I'm not sure those are problems that universities can solve. Those are bigger problems that need to be solved maybe at a higher policy sort of level. But the key thing that I've brought out from today is don't focus on the technology first. Focus on the pedagogy first, and the teaching and the different activities that you could do online. So you need to understand the technology. You need to know what is possible to do, but don't be tied up and say we've got to use this technology. Think, have imagination to understand what's there, what you can do with it, and then find the technology that's going to help you do that. And that's really the message I would take away from today.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. Professor Kay? Your mic is muted. Perfect.
Yeah. Basically, I think that we have to adopt quickly and we have to adapt fast. We have to take as much as we can that's available, and we have to be aware, as Mark just said, of what is out there, what can we do. But in order to do that, particularly our lecturers and our administrators and people need to build their confidence. They need to know and they need to understand. And to some extent, the webinars like this are very useful, except that it's probably mainly people who are involved in this field who have attended. So we need to get this out, and we really need to bring our vice chancellors and our policymakers and everybody on board. I think we need to I think there's a very strong business case to be made for access to the devices and the data. And this is the youth of tomorrow. If those companies are getting access to them now, then they've got clients and customers for the future. So I think that it's more a case of how are we able to bring them on board? And there I think that RUForum can probably help bringing the universities together and lobbying the governments and the multinationals on those issues. But I think key for us now is to build the confidence in what is available and in how they can actually play a role to our faculty in order to get our universities to start to adopt and adapt quickly.
Thank you very much, Professor Kay. Next is Professor Wafula.
Thank you very much. I think my take on this is that it's high time we now valued our collaborative institutions and arrangements. What I mean is, for instance, what Reforum is doing is connecting up very many universities across the continent to be able to be rallied around an objective, and of which now we have this message we are discussing. The other arrangements that we have on the continent, they are also crusading for us to find common areas we can explore if we are going to benefit from the fourth industrial revolution, as His Excellency has put it. If we are going to have repositories that are holding libraries that are going to help us in different disciplines across, whether in medicine, biodiversity, in development agenda, when we begin to do like that, and we do not fragment ourselves to face the gigantic problem we have about resourcing, retooling, with the advent of the new problems and challenges we have, if we are going to go simply to funders to ask for resources, in a split manner to go and achieve the same, we are even confusing the funders. But if we can work together, for instance, what we've just mentioned, the instrument that has been built by Reforum, I can imagine if our vice chancellors and others, we could all say, yes, this is a good instrument, we want to buy in, ministers have agreed, we can jointly get funding together and we implement these projects and we implement and move forward our countries. So I do think that it's time we listened more to collaborations, we build greater collaborations and share the resources, not only infrastructure, even human resource, and the quality is going to be lifted up in a great and within a short time, even to respond to such short challenges. We can do it if we work it together rather than getting into individual cocoons and now begin to think about solving this problem. That's my proposal as of now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Wafula. Professor Eugene or Your Excellency Chief Tesele, if you're still with us and you would like to intervene.
I would like to say one thing. First, let's say two things. The first one is we need a more collaboration between universities to develop a really, really interesting program that really many professors can collaborate to have a very, very good program. By doing other universities from United States or Europe can also be much more interested to Africa in training and learning. The second aspect is a call to our policymaker. We need in technology an effort to support what it is done now. So if our policymaker do not help the effort, the ongoing efforts about the e-learning technology after the COVID, we will go back again for our previous habits. So I prefer that such energy that is, let's say, online now, can be continued in the way that African universities will continue working together to go forward for online learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Eugene. Professor Jude. Please unmute your microphone.
Sorry about that. I forgot about. Okay, my last remarks are related to adapting and adopting that Kay talked about. I think nationally and institutionally, we have to move very fast in doing so. I must say in Uganda, we are happy that government moved a bit fast in trying to adapt to online learning. And at the moment, institutions are being inspected to be able to deliver online. As I speak, my institution was given a license. Its preparation it has put in place. So collaboration is a key to making sure we deliver on this. People are thinking about, the students are thinking about the data, but what we've done as Nkumba University, for example, we've gone to MTN and told them, we need support from you to be able to deliver to the students. And what they've done is to be able to whistle, to allow our learning management system to be accessed by students at less than 50 cents of a dollar in 24 hours. So less than 50 cents. So you see, this is going to them, not waiting for them to come to you. These sort of collaborations are very, very important. And I'm just dreaming of a day when we shall see an African e-resource, whatever repository, where we are having all this localized content, digital content, for all African students to use without a problem. Digital platforms which are collaborative. I dream of having degrees that are collaborative across Africa. This is where we need to go. And I encourage all funders out there that Afrida presents a very, very good opportunity. And I think with the support from them and supporting Reform can go a long way in trying to achieve this dream. Thank you.
Sorry, my mistake now. Apparently, whatever you did is contagious. Now I did the same thing. So Dr. Alice, any final thoughts for this webinar?
Thank you very much. For me, I just want to thank you yourself, Rafik, for this very, very good moderation of such an insightful, educative, expert, yet very, very practical discussion. So many things have been discussed, and some of them, include things that we're dealing with as RU Forum. And among those things, we recognize the strong voice to come up with collaborations, to coordinate the universities perhaps to come together and develop common programs that we can offer at the regional level. So for me really is to thank everybody, the panelists, the very rich discussions that we've had this afternoon, and also on behalf of RU Forum to invite the participants that have participated very, very actively in the chat and in the Q&A, as well as all the panelists to the next webinar, which is going to be on 30th of September. And we trust that this too, like this one, will be very, very exciting and educative. So thank you so much, Rafik, and thank you, Honorable Minister and the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we're coming to the end of this webinar. I would like to thank all the attendees, the panelists, and everybody that's contributed basically to organizing this webinar. It is a pleasure to find this kind of forum of discussion that is actually facilitated by Reform, where we're bringing expertise, continental expertise, local expertise to share among the different members of the network and be able to help actually the development of all those universities. I think we tackled many aspects, most of the aspects that are important in regard to the challenges, the opportunities for online education within the African continent. The one thing that I will be adding probably like as a final departing thoughts in terms of just like next steps and some avoiding some pitfalls. Like the first thing is, and I think it's been mentioned by one of our panelists, to not reinvent the wheel. It's very important. I think whether it's in terms of processes or content and so on, like there's many best practices that's been shared today, and that's also available that you can use to create an environment and online digital environment for both students, professors, that actually can be very beneficial. And also in terms of content, there's many libraries out there that actually you can leverage to create very interesting content. And I think our efforts as African universities should be more about the creating content that's very specific to our continent, to our problem that we're dealing with. And this is something that actually we're not going to find elsewhere. This is the content that we should be focusing on. The next thing and the next point, other than not reinventing the wheel, is about the step-by-step process. Like especially like in the content, a lot of people would be thinking that, oh, yeah, it takes 8 months to create a MOOC. But I think there are many in-between steps that you can be using actually to create content, going from converting content into flipped class mode, starting to bring some blended experience into until you get into a full online course. And so take it easy, step by step, and I think you can get there. And then the last thing that is and is probably the most important, been rehighlighted by almost all the participants, is around the collaboration, like the importance of collaboration between the universities. Let's work together to get those programs actually created. The university brings episodes, we put them together, and then we have programs that we can build on, everyone in a different way, but actually we have to create everything from scratch. It's going to take a lot of resources, time, and none of us have that, especially given the current circumstances and the importance of content. So those 3 points are the final ones that I'll be sharing because they're important, and every one of us actually has to somehow go through those things. With that, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity for moderating this session.